Welcome to Imprint, a podcast about creating a home and life you love. I'm Natalie Walton, an interior designer, stylist, and best-selling author focused on an holistic approach to homes. Each week, I'm sharing insights and interviews about the creative process to help you enhance both your interiors and well-being, as well as provide you with the tools and resources to make considered and sustainable choices with all that you create. Hello everyone, welcome to Imprint. I'm really excited to have you here today because interior styling is a skill that you learn once and you can apply to your interiors over and over again for years to come. It is a skill that has transformed not only my spaces, but my life. I hope that you've been enjoying this season of style, which is underway, and I hope that you found it valuable. Just a reminder that doors are currently open to join the Styling Masterclass. So if you want to get the whole framework and the process to take your interiors to the next level, I would encourage you to go check that out. Go to nataliewalton.com/next level. But in today's episode, what I'm going to do is I really want to share with you the 5 foundations to elevate your interiors, because there is still a lot of confusion about what interior styling is and how it can help you really take those interiors to the next level and how that can then help your business grow. Because I know for so many of you, you're either curious to maybe explore this in the world of interiors, maybe start a new chapter in your life in terms of your career, or you're an interior designer, you've got a business and you really need to stand out from the crowd. Or maybe you've got an Airbnb, you're an interiors photographer, and these are skills that would be really beneficial to you. Or maybe you just love interiors and you just really want to learn how you can take them to that next level, whether it's for yourself in your own home or for clients. So let's just get clear on what interior styling isn't, because I think that's always a good starting point. I've shared this story before, but when I first started at Real Living magazine, when I was working on staff there, and I started as a journalist, not as a stylist. And there was kind of a bit of a joke that like stylists and styling is just about fluffing cushions. And it was a joke because we kind of knew it wasn't true. I mean, it was and it wasn't. There is a little bit of that, but it's so much more than that. And it's actually really, it can be a lot involved in those things. And I was going to say it's like a lot of hard work, and it is and it isn't. Certainly in terms of if you're working on a set build type shoot where you've got a deadline, you've got to create a number of sets, you're building the walls, you're hanging pendants, you're literally laying floorboards, bringing in things like baths. We used to get baths into shoots and into a studio and set up like the vanities and hang the mirrors and do all of those things. Like it was a lot of hard work, but you don't necessarily have to go to that extent if you're using styling as a skill. I mean, of course, if you want to go down the path of interior styling and working for brands, for clients, for agencies, those are all of the things that you can do. And the same skills though, the same principles and the foundations that I'm going to be sharing with you today, they apply whether you are doing that type of shoot or if you are an interior designer and you really are, you're getting the photography for your portfolio and just wanting to make sure that this project that you've been working on for the past maybe 2 years, maybe even longer, that, you've thought about every single little detail, the joinery, the hardware, the tiles, all of those things. You have labored and put your heart and soul into this project. You don't want to let it down with having substandard photography, substandard styling that it doesn't bring the project to life. It doesn't make it sing. It doesn't give you, beautiful images that you can put on your website, that you can share on social media. So it doesn't matter if you're using styling for that purpose, for big set building shoots, or if it is just to improve your home. The principles and the foundations that I'm sharing with you today, they are going to be what you can use across the board. And so just to kind of get some more clarity on, what styling isn't, it's not glorified shopping. I think that, again, this was something that, when I first heard about styling and they're going to all these different shops and sourcing all these different products, and yes, that's a fun part of the job, but it's certainly not all of the job. It's not about buying stuff, just buying into trends, the latest look. And it's definitely not about copying someone else's look. So I truly believe that styling is your secret weapon. It's also often the missing ingredient that really does elevate interiors, that takes them to that next level. It's like the French kiss, the chef's kiss on any kind of interior. And so this is kind of what we're going to be looking at today. So as I said, if you want to go deeper with these ideas, then go check out the Styling Masterclass. I will put a link in the show notes because we go into so much detail and depth and the kind of the step-by-step in terms of me demonstrating to you and then giving feedback to you on your work as well. So it's really invaluable. But let's get into today's session and today's episode. And I think that you're going to find it really valuable in terms of getting that clarity about the foundations and how you can apply them to any space. So maybe for you, you're not really clear on what's involved with interior styling, you're not sure of where to start, or you just don't feel confident. You try and place something in a particular spot and you think, it just doesn't feel right, but what is it? Why does it not feel right? What's missing? So what I want you to understand is that when you get clarity on what interior styling is, that's when you start to feel more confident about taking action. Similarly, when you've got a really clear process, this is when you don't get distracted or sidetracked along the way, and you just have that super focus in terms of what you're trying to achieve and understanding and filter in terms of, is this right? Is this helping me achieve what I want to achieve? And then when you understand what's involved, you can really know that styling is a skill that can be learned. So, for me, like I said, when I was working at magazine, styling was a very vague idea. I mean, back then, not many people knew about stylists, and I started to learn gradually about this is what they do. And then, there are other people out there doing this. And it was kind of like this moment of my eyes just opening wide and kind of thinking, wow, I didn't even know that this existed, because I had at one point when I enrolled in my first degree, economics, which I just quickly decided was not for me, I looked into studying interior design. At the time, you could only do it by TAFE. And I knew that I had to get a degree. Long story, but my mom was she was not going to be happy with me going to TAFE, a technical college. She wanted me to get a degree. And I knew kind of deep down within me that was something that I wanted to do for myself as well. So I went down that path. But it's interesting how that when I then started working at the magazine, I sort of realized, there's this other way that you can work in the world of interiors. And it doesn't have to involve going back to study interior design, but it is a kind of skill that you can learn on the job. It's a skill that you can learn relatively quickly when you know and understand the principles and what's involved. And, it's really important for you to understand that it is a journey that you go on. You can't necessarily expect to be at the same level that somebody else is at 15 years in. That, when you first start, then you are that kind of beginner level. And that's when you have that uncertainty about what should I place where? And does this look any good? And should I keep editing or should I add something else? Or what is the best thing to put into this space? And so there's a lot of kind of fear and reluctance when you're at that stage, but you go on a journey. And when you start to do the work more and more consistently, then you start to notice patterns. You start to notice what works, what doesn't work, and you start to get that feedback. I mean, that's why I love giving feedback within the Styling Masterclass, because, it can kind of shortcut that process. What can take years in terms of you going through that process by yourself and sort of looking back at your work and seeing, that didn't work and I've got to try this thing a little bit differently. You can get that instant feedback, and instantly, and people say this all the time, is that, even seeing other people getting feedback on their work, they learn so much from that as well. And so you go through this process of applying this knowledge, applying these skills, applying the principles, and you get better little bit by little bit, or, like I said, you can fast track the process, and then you start to get more clarity. And when you get that clarity, that enables you to feel more certain, which enables you to feel more confident. So it really is this process that you need to go through to then eventually start to be able to style with more conviction. So it really is a process that you've got to learn the foundations, apply them, and get better day by day, week by week, year by year. So I want you to think about, where are you on your journey right now? And to know and understand that it is a journey, that this is something that, for me, I'm still on my journey. I'm still looking to improve. It's even as you kind of into it many, many years later. I mean, it's like somebody who is a painter. If they're painting a canvas, I mean, the very first time they pick up a paintbrush, they're not going to expect to be at a mastery level. However, they know that they need to commit to their practice. They need to show up and, show up in the studio and do the work. They need to keep experimenting with colors. They need to experiment with form and technique and all of those things. And that their first canvas that they complete is going to be very different to the one that they complete in a year's time or 3 years' time or 15 years' time. And even when they're sort of 15 years, they don't think, oh, I know everything about painting. It is a lifelong journey and they will be informed by different influences. And it's a beautiful journey to go on. It's something that I really enjoy in my journey as a creative. So like I said, I think it's just really important to know and understand where you're at on your journey and to give yourself a little bit of grace in relation to that. You don't have to be hard on yourself in terms of where you're at, to know that if you're willing to show up and do the work, then you can improve. And, there is always ways that we can get better and show up and, like I said, commit to our practice. So like I said, today I really want to help you to know and understand the foundations of styling so that you really can take your interiors to the next level. So I'm going to share with you 5 mistakes that I often see come up and the foundation that kind of addresses this mistake. So the first mistake that often comes up is playing small. And I see this all the time, apologetic interiors. When I was working at Real Living magazine and we would get so many people submit their homes into the magazine to get featured. And so we were having to make a decision on, is this going to be something that we could publish? Does it feel strong enough? And we were using words like that. Is it strong enough? Is it strong enough to be a feature? And even within that, then we would often run 3 to 5 house features within what was called the, I think we called it the well of the magazine. It's funny how you know and use that language all the time, and then you step away from it for a while. And it's like, was it the well? I'm pretty sure we called it the well. And anyway, so we would run house features, and then within those, there was a hierarchy. It would start with the strongest. If it was 5, it would start with the strongest. And often you would finish with the second strongest, so that there's that kind of really strong bookends in terms of the way that they were placed within the magazine. And it's very similar as well when you're creating a book in terms of having like really strong images up front and strong ones at the back, and then sort of peppering, them in throughout. I mean, of course, you want all of them to be strong, but there are always going to be some that are more standout than others. And so it's really this idea of, what are the strong homes or the strong interiors, and really avoiding the ones that are apologetic. And that was probably the number one reason that we rejected homes within the magazine to be featured, was because they were apologetic. They kind of weren't committed one way or another. They were a little bit sort of middle of the road. They weren't, committed to a particular look or a particular style. And there wasn't something that you could really grab onto. And it was like they had been created in a very safe way, but they were only sort of half done, if you know what I mean. And so really what I want you to encourage you to do is you really need to challenge yourself. You really need to push yourself to the next level. And so the first foundation is to really create a compelling vision. It is so important to really know and understand the caliber of interiors that you want to create. I really encourage you to look at the best, really study their work, and then look at your work and what you've created. Now, this is not to beat yourself up. And obviously it's important to understand that you can't compare, somebody's 20 years of experience with where you are today, but you can still learn from them. You can study them with a keen eye and really notice what they do. Yesterday I was stacking kindling. My son had gathered it and he left it on the front deck. And as I was doing this task, sort of like going through it, because he just literally he went all around our property and he just collected all these sticks, and it was a massive pile, but he just put them right outside the French doors off the living room. And so I went, okay, this is, we need to tidy this up a little bit. So I've got this sort of bucket, this like galvanized steel bucket that I had, and I was putting all the kindling in. And as I was doing this, I sort of thought, wow, it's really interesting that years ago, I would have been so inspired to have like taken a photo of the kindling and the galvanized bucket, and it was all really rustic and kind of had, a charm to it. And I was thinking instantly of probably about like 10 years ago now, that there were quite a lot of accounts that I would follow on Instagram that were really of that aesthetic, very much like rustic interiors, and how much like I admired what they had created within their own homes, and how I sort of had this moment of realization as I was going through all this kindling that my style has evolved a lot since then. I can appreciate that, and I don't think there's something wrong with that style, but my style has really evolved from that because I've started to educate my eye more and more in terms of other possibilities, and my style has evolved and grown. And so, I think about that, it's really this journey in terms of what I am aware of, what I appreciate, and what I also want to create with my own spaces. And so now I am kind of looking at different types of interiors in terms of pushing myself and growing and evolving. And, my books have played a huge role in that in terms of the types of interiors that I've exposed myself and also, the type of interiors that I've wanted to create on my own projects. And so, like I said, I can really see that my own aesthetic has evolved, and it's evolved and matured. And I've really wanted to push myself creatively to not just keep styling like rustic spaces, but it's expanded what I value. And like I said, it's not to say that rustic is bad, but it's just not for me anymore. And so I'm referencing people and spaces with a more, I guess, refined aesthetic rather than rustic. And so, this is my encouragement for you in terms of thinking, where do you want to be? What types of interiors do you want to create? And if it's rustic, that's completely fine. Look at who is, further ahead on their journey than you in relation to that. But if it's more of a refined aesthetic or an elevated aesthetic or whatever that is for you, then go and look at that kind of inspiration in terms of really pushing yourself and noticing what the difference is. And so I want you to think about on, a scale of 1 to 10, where are you right now in terms of creating this vision for yourself in terms of the type of interiors you want to create, the standard that you want to set for yourself, and really know and understand where you are on your journey right now and what do you need to do to start improving that? What steps do you need to take to start reaching that next level? So the second mistake is really about skipping the planning process, because when it comes to interior styling, often what I see is that it hasn't been planned out enough. Now, there does come a point where this becomes much more of a shortcut and you don't necessarily need to put as much time and effort into it. However, when you're starting out, I think there can be a tendency to just kind of go with the flow. And, the trouble with that is that the flow needs to know where to go. So you need to provide guidance. You need to be kind of like the banks of the river to provide direction in terms of where this creative energy is going to go. And this is why it's so important to create a clear brief for yourself. When I started styling shoots every week, I soon realized the importance of creating a brief. I couldn't leave the photo shoots up to chance. There was too much at stake. I mean, the company had invested they were paying not only obviously my salary, but they were paying a photographer fee, a studio fee, or a homeowner, or, there's all these people, maybe sometimes makeup artists would be there. Sometimes they'd even have a fashion stylist on the shoot. So all of these people were going to turn up, and it was effectively on me to create this magic, to create this interior scene, to create this beautiful imagery. And the photographer would capture that. And obviously that was a collaboration with us. But it was a lot of it is on the shoulders of the stylist. I mean, if the stylist doesn't perform, then the photographer doesn't have anything to capture. So it's so important, when you go to a photo shoot. And like I said, if you're an interior designer and you've been working on this project for, the past couple of years, you don't want to then leave the styling as an afterthought. You don't want to leave that to chance, because you've put so much of your time and energy and resources into this shoot. You really want to make the most of it. You really want to maximize it so you're getting the best possible images. And if that means bringing in, extra furniture or props or artwork or whatever it takes to really elevate this project and really lift it so that, you've got imagery that you can share on your website or your social media, then, you've got to do what you got to do to get that beautiful imagery. So before every shoot, I would create a shot list. I would create sketches of what I wanted to kind of style and create within each particular shot. I would have an idea of the space. If I was going to be styling, I would be either doing a recce or be looking at the images that had been sent through, and I would be studying those. I would, be getting the props and so on, know and understand which props were going to be going into which space. I'd kind of write that down on my sketches, like the names of the props, or draw them. And I would even look at, what could I repurpose from parts of the homeowner's home, or what I could take from my own home in terms of taking it to the shoot. So like I said, you really don't want to leave your interiors to chance. And recently on a recent episode where I interviewed Bex Shepherd, I mean, she is out there doing this all the time, and this is what she's doing as well. So this is what you need to do to make the most of your photo shoots or styling any space. And so again, I want you to think about, like, where are you right now in terms of the amount of planning that you take in relation to photo shoots? Are you creating a shot list? Are you creating like a props list in terms of knowing what you've got, knowing what's going to go where, and really understand what you're trying to achieve with every shot? Are you clear in terms of the way that you're communicating if you're working with a photographer in terms of what's going to go where? Do you have an idea before you even start of the type of flowers or foliage you want to include in spaces? So really know and understand, where are you in this process right now, and what do you need to do to start making improvements in that? How can you start planning better? What are the steps that you can take to start, allowing time for that? And like I said, yes, over time, you get quicker and quicker at this. And my sketches, they're very, very basic, because it's not about necessarily communicating to a client. I mean, there have been times where I've done that, and obviously I take a little bit more time and effort with my sketches. But really, I mean, there is this theory as well that when you share a sketch, you actually want it to be quite simple, because if you're too literal, then people expect that exact thing. And I've heard and, know of this with interior design as well, that, there are many interior designers who are wary of doing modeling, and sort of like the 3D rendering, because people expect sometimes that exact look, even though that is a design concept and it can change and evolve over the journey. So, it is important sometimes that it is more of a basic sketch rather than too detailed. Okay, so the third mistake that I see a lot is not creating spaces with enough feeling. There are too many interiors that are bland, that lack personality, and they just look very, beige. I mean, I like beige, so maybe maybe vanilla. I like vanilla too. So, okay, I'm going to have to come up with another analogy, but they just basically lack personality. Now, look, I love simple spaces, but there's a difference between simplicity with soul and a space that is devoid of personality. And so, it's really important to get that balance between editing your spaces, making sure that everything is there for a reason, being really intentional with what you create, and also not making them devoid of personality, or just basically creating a carbon copy of someone else's space. That's also another way that you can create a space that feels devoid of feeling, or when people sort of do that kind of a look, and it's like everything is part of that look. They've kind of gone overboard with the rustic farmhouse look, or the sort of beach house look, and everything's nautical and it's too much, too much cane and blue and white stripes. So it's how can we infuse personality and character? We do that when we infuse spaces with your signature style. This is foundation 3. Infuse spaces with your signature style. So you need to embrace what makes you unique. What is unique to you and your style? What are the spaces that that if people see it, that they can see your personality in that space? There is humor, or there is a sense of restraint, or there is, some element of your personality is expressed in this space. Now, obviously, if this is for a client, you want to be doing that in relation to them. And so you need to be filtering it through their personality and what is unique to them. But it's so important to create interiors with emotion and feeling so that when somebody steps into the space, they are experiencing the space. They're experiencing the fullness of the space, and they're experiencing the personality of the person who has created this space. And so you need to infuse spaces with what makes you or your clients unique. And that is a really key ingredient in terms of creating spaces with personality. And, going for unexpected combinations, or going for, things that the more that you tap into the pieces that you have loved over the years, or the homes that you have loved, and kind of infuse that into your spaces, the more that you're going to create a space that's not just a copy of something you've seen on Instagram or Pinterest, but it really is going to be something that's quite unique. So I want you to think again about, where are you in terms of this? How confident do you feel about infusing your unique personality into your spaces, or that of your clients? And what would your spaces look like if you were able to get better at this? Because it is a really important ingredient to get right. This is why I've got like a whole module all about, knowing and understanding your signature style within the Styling Masterclass, so that you can get a better understanding of this, and then you can start to infuse it. And I've also got a training on that, of how to infuse your signature style into your spaces. So these are the things that I want you to be thinking about with your interiors and how you can do that. Okay, the 4th mistake is buying too many trend pieces. Oh my goodness, I see this over and over again, and it just needs to stop. Let's make it stop. Trend pieces, they date so quickly. They're never a good idea. They never feel good. I was actually recently gifted a vase at an event, and look, it's nice, but I just don't love it. I don't have a story connected with it. And I was actually considering using it the other day, because I feel like all my stories relate to my son and the garden, but this is kind of how we live our life. And he had been doing some gardening and some trimming, and he didn't put the plant in the compost that he'd sort of been pruning. And so I looked and I was like, actually, that looks quite pretty. It's got this beautiful silvery leaf. And so I thought, I'm going to put that in a vase. And I went into the house and I thought, oh, should I go and get that vase that I was gifted? And I thought about it. And I thought, no, I just don't love it. Like it's not bad, but I wouldn't have bought it myself. If I was to go to a shop, I wouldn't have bought it myself. And this is something that I experienced a lot when I was working on the magazine. We were gifted things all the time, or I do photo shoots and people would say, oh, just keep that cushion. And at the first I was like, oh, wow, like, because I was on a very low wage, and, this was so exciting to me to get free stuff. And I would be like, wow, yes, I'll keep this cushion, and I would keep all these different things. And then when we made our big tree change, I went through this process of thinking, do I actually want this? Like, would I buy this again? And I truly believe that's a great question to ask yourself. Would you buy it again if you had a chance? And if you wouldn't, then I would recommend letting it go. And so that's what I'm going to do with this vase. Look, somebody else is going to really love it. So I'm either going to, I think, first of all, I'm going to offer it to my mum and see if she might enjoy it. Although she actually has got so many similar things to this. So she might say no. And if she says no, I'm just going to take it to the local op shop, and somebody else will get so much joy out of it. So, I would really encourage you to think about, and this piece, it wasn't particularly a trend piece, a little bit, it's kind of borrowing from that kind of handmade ceramics look. I kind of can see there's another brand and I can see that they've copied them a little bit. And I think that probably also adds to the fact that I think, yeah, it doesn't feel really original as a piece. So again, it's like all these little warning bells are going off in my mind that this is not the right piece for me. And so, I didn't want it because I didn't love it. So I truly believe that, trend pieces, they are a waste of money. They're a waste of your time. And of course, the world's precious resources. So when there are so many beautiful timeless pieces out there. So I would really encourage you to opt for them because they are going to add the character. They are going to add the personality. They are going to be part of the story that you can share and the memory that when you step into your space, you'll have that emotional connection to your interiors. And this kind of leads on nicely to, well, it is the foundation number 4, which is to understand that objects make or break a room. So the objects that you source are so important. They really are going to create such a different feeling within your spaces. Compare a synthetic rug. I know there are so many of those like washable rugs around right now, and they are all synthetic. And when you step on them, they just feel synthetic. For me, they're not for me, I should say. Versus, say, a vintage rug from Morocco, which I'm looking at right now in the studio, and in terms of character, there's just no comparison. And also beware of adding objects just for the sake of adding them, which does tie into my next little mistake that I'm going to be sharing with you. But before we hop onto that, I just want you to think about, where are you in terms of really avoiding, first of all, I guess, avoiding trend-based pieces? Do you tend to, just feel like, oh, I'll just go and get this thing and I'll put this into the space. And it feels like a quick fix, but really ultimately you end up 6 months later thinking, yeah, I don't think that's right. Or in terms of really knowing and understanding the value of objects and how the pieces that you choose for your spaces really can just take those spaces to the next level, and thinking about how you can be more conscious when you choose different objects in terms of adding value to your spaces. Okay, which leads us on to mistake number 5, which is too much stuff and too many bits and pieces. And I see this all the time when I am giving feedback on assignments for the Styling Masterclass. So every week there is a different assignment that I give everyone. It will be something like styling a coffee table or styling a sideboard. And so it really is like taking the principles of styling and applying them to different interiors and then getting feedback on that. And particularly in those first few weeks when people are still very much learning, the thing that I'm often saying to people is there are just too many small pieces in here. There's no sense of volume. If they took away 2 or 3 of those objects and added one piece that was bigger and more impactful, it would make so much more of a difference. So just know that little things don't create impact, that you really want to go for volume. And foundation 5 is to edit as much as you style. So always be editing. What you take away is just as important as what you add. And ask yourself, is this necessary? Is it playing an important part in the scene? And if you take it away, will it be missed? Does it feel like a gaping hole? Or can you just sort of reorganize what remains so that it is more impactful? And I really would encourage you to know that the best interiors are edited really intentionally. Edit until everything is there for a reason. So again, on a scale of 1 to 10, think about, how good are you at editing right now? And if you could start getting better at editing, add that as a step that at the end of styling every space that you ask yourself, is everything there for a reason? What impact would that start to have on your spaces as well? All right, let's just do a quick review of some of the ideas that we've looked at today. So the first mistake was to stop playing small. And this led to the foundation of create a compelling vision. Really push yourself to create a vision that stretches you in terms of the types of spaces that you want to create. Number 2 was the mistake was skipping the planning process. And the foundation was to create a clear brief. That when you are really clear on what you're trying to create, you will actually create with so much more confidence as well. Number 3 was to not create spaces with enough feeling. And the foundation was to infuse your spaces with your signature style and really inject personality into your spaces. Number 4 was the mistake was buying too many trend pieces. And the foundation was to understand that objects can make or break a room. And number 5 was styling with too much stuff. And the foundation there is to always be editing. So I'd love to hear from you about what has been most valuable. This is episode 201. And I would love to hear from you in the comments section if you can. So I would love, and I really encourage you to take one idea. Maybe it's to really look at the objects that you use when you're styling spaces and think about, what is something that you could improve upon in terms of those objects, or what is something that you could edit. And like I said, the idea of this episode today is really to help you know and understand those foundations that will help you take your interiors to the next level. And if you want to kind of get that practical feedback, the insider knowledge and the whole framework to how to bring this to life, then like I said, doors are open to the Styling Masterclass at the moment. So if you're interested in that, then go to nataliewalton.com/next level. And we will put a link in the show notes so that you can go straight there. And think about these 5 foundations. If you apply these to your spaces, think about if you start doing this every time you have a shoot or every time you're styling a space, how they are going to improve, a month from now, a year from now, 3 years from now, and what an impact that is going to start to make on not only your interiors, but also your business as well. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you found this episode valuable, and I look forward to connecting again with you. It's going to be tomorrow because we have got a bumper week of podcast episodes for you this week, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you very soon. See you soon. All of the links and info for this episode are at nataliewalton.com/podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so that you can get a direct download of the latest episode. And I really appreciate when you take a minute to rate and review, as well as share the love with someone you know who might benefit from this episode, or on social media. If you'd like to access a range of free resources, come visit my website, nataliewalton.com. Thank you to Jaeger Media for producing this podcast. And I would also like to acknowledge the people of the Bundjalung Nation where it was recorded, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I look forward to connecting again soon. I'm Natalie Walton, and you've been listening to Imprint.